Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino Degregori, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino Degregori.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Degregori. Today we have another amazing guest with us. We have Brian St. Andre. He's the Director of Workforce Transformation for Booz Allen. I've known Brian for almost 3 years, and I've always been impressed with his leadership style. Not only how he treated me always in our relationship, but how he treats others, both his team as well as other partners. Always been impressed and amazing how you carry yourself, sir. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more today. So with that, if you can introduce yourself, your name, you give us your background. We'd love to learn more about you.
Thanks, Gino. That's really kind of you. I appreciate you inviting me here today on the Kind Leader Podcast. It's truly an honor for me. I've worked for Booz Allen for the last 14 years. I'm currently leading our workforce transformation business for our geospatial clients. 5 years before Booz Allen, I worked for Northrop Grumman. I had a great time there. 5 years before that, I was in the music industry. I've been married for 20 years, and I have 3 boys.
Awesome. Music industry. I'm curious about that. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But thank you again for being part of the show here. The first questions that I'm asking all my guests, what does it mean to be a kind leader to you?
To me, it means really being empathetic to people. And empathy is defined as understanding and sharing feelings of others. It means thinking beyond myself, being intentional to care for others, and to let them know that I care for them. Let me unpack this a little bit. By default, without any action on our parts, we tend to understand our own feelings. To understand and share other people's feelings takes work. Mm-hmm. It takes intentionality. Once you understand somebody's feelings, I believe sharing those feelings requires to some degree that you care about that person and you take on yourself some of that feeling. Lastly, I believe it's important to communicate what you're doing. You're doing something because you care for the person.
Right. And caring is a big thing. And I appreciate you highlighting all those different things. For example, and caring can be defined or executed in so many ways. It can be as simple as sending a text or a message through Teams or whatever system you have. It's, how are you doing? I hope all is well. Just wanted to say hi. As a leader, you know how much that means to people, like that you are being thought of. And that's a big one. So I really appreciate the caring and the audience as they listen. Is like, there's so many different definitions of kind leader, but one of the big ones is not only leading with empathy, but caring about your people. So
and the time that it takes. Mm-hmm. You talked about checking in on people.
Yeah.
When you give somebody your time,
mm-hmm.
that shows them that they matter to you.
Absolutely. And it seems so insignificant sometimes, right? It's like, I don't want to bother, or I want to, but it's I 100% agree with you. So the follow-on question to that is, can you share a personal story as it relates to, your experience with kind leadership?
A few years ago, I had a team member working on a client engagement, was having some challenges, to the point where we needed to consider removing them from the job. At the time, this person was one of very few African Americans in the environment. I knew that I had to approach the situation with empathy, because if I didn't, I wouldn't really consider how was that person feeling? Mm-hmm. What was the way that they were framing the situation? And the truth, Gino, is that I have no idea what it is like to be a minority.
Right.
Most of the time when I sit in a room, when I'm on a video call, a lot of people look just like me.
Right.
So I have to actively think about, and I did in this situation, what might this person be thinking? What might they be feeling with? How are they framing the situation? How's that different than I'm thinking about it? Now, I still had to help the person by being a leader and holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness was not about giving them a pass or pulling any punches,
Right.
because that actually wouldn't help them.
No.
But it was about thinking about their perspective, and empathy was just at the heart of the approach there.
Right. And that's a key right there. I like what you said about empathy as well as accountability. Because many times when we talk to people, think kindness or kind is, oh, this person is nice. When you marry the kindness or kind and leadership, you put a level of accountability into how you lead. Like you said, you can't pull any punches. You have to make sure that they understand what has happened. And regardless of your background, regardless of who you are, right, you need to understand that sometimes it's hard. The other thing what you said is we live our own world, like through our eyes. I don't know how you see the world. You don't know how I see the world. We could only see our external, what we look like or what our backgrounds may be. So it's very hard. Like that's one of the biggest things, right? Understanding what is happening in people's minds or their beliefs or their upbringings. We don't know, right? And that is the hardest part as it relates to how do you lead with empathy? How do you understand? And that's where it takes time to care and go deeper into understanding. And I'm sure as you dealt with that situation, you led with empathy. You try to understand what went on, right? What was going on? Maybe something in his personal life or he or she, I'm not sure, or something, right? And you have to lead it, have to walk around it very carefully, but you help them navigate through that, right?
Right. And it's about being intentional. For me, none of these things come naturally. Naturally, I think about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think about things the way that makes sense to me.
Right.
But I know that's not how others think. So if I really want to connect deeply with someone, I have to be intentional,
right,
to think about it and to question, to explore, to ask, like,
right,
how are you thinking about this?
Right. Yeah, intentionability, is that a word? Or being intentional?
Intentionality.
Intentionality, thank you. It's big because you have to put that's an energy, right? That you put into the world, right? And you'd be surprised how many people don't think about the life they're living, right? They get up, they do their thing, and they're moving along the world without any, rinse and repeat, right? And you have to be intentional. If you want to make an impact, you want to make a difference, you have to be intentional into what you do in your life. So
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate the example there. And, I hope that individual is doing great now.
I think he is.
Wherever he is. One of the things that I always try to ask folks, because it's tied to the kind leader and a personality, is the difference between growth mindset and scarcity mindset. What are your thoughts as it relates to that and bringing it back to being a kind leader?
When I consider just the magnificence of the earth that we live in, and even more importantly than the earth, people.
Yeah.
I believe that we have been created with very clear purpose, very clear design, and a foundational purpose within each of us is to grow.
Mm-hmm.
That is designed for us to grow. So when I think about leading people, growth has to be at the center of it. It just doesn't fit if it's not at the center of it. If you don't have growth as a purpose, there's a disconnect with that design that I believe is central to all of us.
Right.
Almost 3,000 years ago, Solomon was king of Israel. He wrote a book of Proverbs, wise sayings, short stories that illuminate truths. One of the Proverbs says, where there's no vision, the people will perish. In our context and culture, Gino, I think this supports the idea that growth is a necessary ingredient for people to flourish. I keep growth at the forefront of any leading in my life because I want everyone to flourish. I want to flourish, and I want to see anybody that I'm connected to flourish as well.
That's beautiful. I got chills, man, Brian. Just because that growth, that's a mindset, right? It's and as I was saying, people don't experience that. One of the things that I love telling people is the world happening to you or for you. When you shift that mindset into this world is happening to you to experience, to grow, to learn, to impact, right? That is when you start thinking like that, the world will change. And it's not happening to you or like negative things are happening because of X, Y, and Z. It's more like, okay, something didn't go my way. Why did it not go my way? What can I learn from that? And how can I improve so it doesn't happen again? And how can I work with my team to improve that, right? So growth is a big thing. And I was at a talk on Wednesday. I go to West Virginia University, and that's where I graduated, and we do a lot of recruiting. And this was an industry day at the business school, and I was part of a panel talking to the group of students. There were probably 50 students there, from freshmen all the way to seniors, right? And one of the questions that one of the folks asked is, how do you navigate through limiting belief? Well, the question was more like the imposter syndrome. That was an interesting question, a good panel, great folks. And we were talking about careers and stuff like that. And that came up, and I was like, oh, that question is for me. And it's like 80 or 90% of our thoughts every day are negative. I don't know if you realize there's a study out there.
I did not.
Yeah. Are negative in a way that is trying to protect you. Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't go that way. Or you know what I mean? So it's, how do you shift the mindset? How do you talk to yourself in a way that you want to, I said, going back to the growth, right? How do you talk to yourself so you can help yourself grow and others grow?
Yeah, I believe it. I think about, as soon as you said that, it makes me think of in business school, I remember studying prospect theory, which says that managers fear more what they stand to lose than what they stand to gain.
Wow. Yeah.
So you think about what that's saying. It's saying that as we navigate managing work and leading people in organization, we may have a tendency to fear more when something goes wrong than the commensurate gain if something goes right.
Yeah.
And I think that's critical to think about, because it tells us a little bit about our human condition. And we need to actively think about, what can we do to change the environment, to change how we position ourselves, so that we're not operating from a place of fear about what we stand to lose, but rather we're thinking about, how can we grow? How can we be part of other people's growth?
Exactly. That fear, oh man, it's just, we'll talk a little bit about culture here in a second, but the fear is so limiting. It completely stops your growth because you're afraid to take the next step. Or like you said, managers out there are fear of not meeting the numbers or fearful of getting yelled at or whatever, right? That is something that, and I'm trying to do here with this podcast, and to educate folks out there, right? New leaders coming out, existing leaders in this world out there, that shift the mind into more of a growth mindset. And I'll add even gratitude in there, because when you're in that gratitude state, fear, anger, sadness tends to, I don't say dissolve completely, but it brings you into the present of where we are, So
gratitude definitely reframes the picture positively. It makes me think of, I was fortunate enough to work with Maisha Glover, an awesome leader who worked for Booz Allen for a number of years, and she's at McKinsey now as a partner. She always talked about gratitude. We actually, under her leadership, changed our win parties to gratitude parties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? The focus was on thankfulness. She's a great leader that I'll never forget.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, for sure. Which brings us into your title, right, with Booz Allen, is workforce transformation. So I was curious, how do you incorporate, our discussions here in leadership, right, whether it's kindness, empathy, whatever, into that? What does that mean, and how do you incorporate empathy into that position?
The clients that we serve, they have a very clear mission that is very significant in the world in which we live. And the focus of the work that my team does is all about those functions in organization that are enablers of the mission. They're not the direct mission itself. They're all of the complementary assets, all of the complementary functions that enable that mission to be as effective as it can be and to be efficient. So as we think about transformation of people, it's always about how do we encourage people to do the greatest things that they can do so that they're making the greatest impact for the purpose for which the organization exists. So all of these things that we're talking about are enablers of people's growth, of their well-being, of their flourishing. And when the people who are supporting the mission are flourishing, they are making it so that the mission is impactful, and it's the greatest that it can be.
That's an amazing description of what you do, and how you, in Booz Allen, essentially is creating and growing individuals to impact the customer or the mission, right? And that is huge. I mean, that is, we're here at Bravo Consulting. We're not the size of Booz Allen, but our vision, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, is it's not technology, it's not innovation, is to attract and create kind leaders that are impacting our customers, partners, and communities.
That's awesome.
That is, and I repeat it when I meet new people. I repeat it to the employees, right? We are attracting and creating, right? And you'd be amazed. This goes back into the mindset. How many amazing people we continue to attract, how many folks we continue to grow and create, right? And not only employees, but partners and customers. And coming back to what you guys are doing, we'd love to learn more, maybe later on how we can incorporate and, see some of those things. Because I always admire, like I said, admire you and your leadership style, but also what Booz Allen has done, and the type of people that are in that organization are amazing.
Thanks, Gino. I'm impressed, with how you lead as well, and appreciate the partnership that we have with you. And it's no surprise to me that you have the vision that you just shared. And I think that's awesome because you attract people who want to do greater things. Go back to what I shared about my belief that we are designed with purpose.
Yeah.
In that, I also believe that people naturally want to do the greatest things that they can do. So when you set that vision and you are calling people to something that they see as great, that is in itself incredibly attractive.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we're just getting started. We've been in business for 16 years, but I'm looking forward to 20, 30 more, and it's the global impact. One more thing I'd like to say about that is people talk about generational wealth, right? I talk about generational impact, and trying to coin that, by the way. And it's because imagine the way we deliver our message, the way we talk to people. It's not just transactional. It's not just one-to-one. It's one-to-many. Because what we're sharing here, you're sharing with others, I'm sharing with others, and now we have this platform where we can share to the world. We're impacting many lives. So generational impact is something that is also part of my personal vision, to continue to create amazing, kind leaders worldwide.
It makes me think of a couple things. One, money's really interesting. Money is important, right? We definitely live in a material world where you need money. It's a medium for transactions. It's a medium to buy things that are important,
right,
for our survival, for our enjoyment. But money in itself, like generational wealth, is what made me think of this.
Right.
I don't think it's a great pursuit. Booz Allen, our purpose is to empower people to change the world. Changing the world, that's a great pursuit.
Yes.
The things that you can do with money for good in the world, that's a good pursuit. That's something worth chasing. The money is what comes when you do that well. And it provides the resource, it provides the ability to do those things. And then on a more personal note, it makes me think of, I love John Foreman from the band Switchfoot. And he's got a great song. I think it's on one of his EPs, but he says, I want to be rich in love, not money.
Ooh.
Our love is our inheritance, honey.
Wow.
Kind of singing. I always think of him singing to his wife on that, but I think the same way. I don't want to die and just leave a bunch of money and people are like, that guy was rich.
Right.
I want to die and people are like, that guy loved people. That guy focused on things that have impact beyond what we see.
Exactly. Oh, that's beautiful, Brian. Thank you for sharing. I got to listen to that song.
Great song.
Yeah, for sure. The reality is money's energy, right? It comes and goes, right? It's not something that impacts. Impacts lives in the material world, right? But what you said is love, caring, helping others, rising together. Those are the things that really make an impact and create that generational impact that I've been talking about. So thank you for sharing, for sure. One thing that we wanted to add here was, cultivating that growth mindset would be great.
Being intentional about everything we do is how we cultivate a growth mindset. Also, we regularly talk about growth. I'm a big believer that if things are important to you, you have to talk about them. The more that you talk about them, the more that they become a regular part of how you exist.
Yeah. And that goes back to what I was saying is our self-talk, right? Is how we talk. One of the things that I do, we'll call it mantra, call it how you talk. You get up in the morning or before you go to sleep. We talked about gratitude, right? We talked about, and I just talk to myself. It's like, I'm thankful for what I have. Thankful for my family, my health, the business and the people and the leaders and all that stuff. And then you change this depending on the situation. But then in the morning, I was like, what is my purpose today? What do I need to focus on? What are the things that I really want to make sure that I'm impacting? So being intentional, it goes back to what we said earlier, intentional as well as with that purpose and the vision for yourself. So thank you for sharing on that.
You're welcome.
Let's talk a little bit about resilience in leadership. Let's discuss how, leaders can build and demonstrate resilience in the face of adversity, essentially, and how this trait contributes to a kind and effective leadership style.
When things are hard, in particular, I really lean into leading with vulnerability. And to be honest, this was not an awesome week. There were just things that were happening left and right where I was like, wow, this is tough. This is challenging. And when I'm in a situation like that, I share, especially with the leaders that are closest to me, here's what I'm thinking. Here's how I'm feeling about this situation. Now, I don't let it end in a way that is depressing or doesn't, cast the right vision, but I share, here's the tough things that I'm thinking through, that I'm feeling, and then how we're going to overcome it.
Right.
And to get their perspective about the same. And I really just don't shy away from those hard conversations. I don't want to be a leader who looks at difficult things and just kind of sweeps it under the rug.
You can't,
No.
Vulnerability is huge because you can't expect people to trust you if you can't be open, be vulnerable, right?
You have to be vulnerable.
Yeah, you have to share those thoughts. So this was not a good week for us too. Certain things happened on a different contract, and I'm like, it's like interesting. Wow, what could we do? And it was out of, some of the things are out of your control, right? They just are, right? And that's where people get caught up in the moment. It's like, oh no, why this, why that, or something like that. It's like, okay, it happened. It already happened, right? So let's lean into it and then let go. Because if you lean into it and continue to hug it and continue to stay, that energy will eat you alive, will eat you, and start, those stories start coming in, am I good enough? What could I have done better? Or, no, it already happened. Learn from it, right? Touch it, lean in for a second, and then move on. Okay, how are we going to get out? How are we going to continue to move forward and progress and continue with that growth mindset,
Right. And I think it's important to remind ourselves to be okay with the idea that vulnerability is not always pretty. It's not like a performance.
Right.
It's raw. Might not be your best time to be on the stage and to be seen by many, but in the right setting, authentically, it's good to be vulnerable.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've been very vulnerable at times, throughout the 16 years of the company, So great things has happened and some bad things have happened, and and you got to navigate through those many times. So thank you for sharing on that. One of the things we want to talk about a little bit here is on values, right? Core values. And as we're talking about resilience in leadership and facing adversity, how can we be grounded in our values when facing adversity?
I found that being grounded in values before you're under pressure is the best way to demonstrate those values when you face pressure. If you have to think about it when you experience the adversity, it's kind of too late. You want it to be so deeply ingrained in who you are, what you do, how you behave, that your natural response comes from a position of values that you believe in. About 7 years ago, Booz Allen reimagined our core values. We had 10 values. 10 was kind of difficult, just from a practical perspective to remember. We made 5 values that are very personal to us. They mean a lot more than just words on a wall. I want to share them with you. The first is unflinching courage. The second is passionate service. The third is champion's heart. The fourth is collective ingenuity. And the fifth is ferocious integrity. Within each of those, we have these amplifying statements that give a little bit more of a sense of what do they mean. For example, passionate service includes embracing the mission, listening and acting with empathy, making meaningful connections, and building community through generosity. So as I lead at Booz Allen, as I exist as a contributing member, I try to have the values be at the forefront of everything that I do. Whenever I'm thinking about how should I approach a situation, how should I make this business decision, how should I engage with this colleague, these things are my guiding light. And they're to the point where they're so ingrained in me that I find myself sharing them as I naturally talk about what we're going to do. And in that way, they're a very real part of our culture. And I think it's one of the best things that we have done in the 14 years that I've been there.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Those are really good core value. And actually, I've been working with Booz Allen for as long as the company has been in existence. And I don't think I've ever got a chance to really listen because we're not in the inside per se, right? But thank you for sharing and sharing to our audience here. And 5 is a perfect number. And we also have 5 core value. I won't share them here, but maybe a little later time. But very similar, right? And I got to say, one of those core values is kind leader, right? We do have that.
That's great.
And I noticed that you guys have one of them and you talk about empathy, which is amazing, right? And that's what, I think that's why I continue to be impressed and continue to be amazed in the people and the culture of Booz Allen. You can feel it, you can see it, all over with the folks that I've interacted with for sure. So
thanks, Gino.
So thank you for sharing that. And that really, just one more thing to add is, like you said, it becomes muscle memory, right? In a way that everything that you do, from recruiting, hiring, and even firing, because people do change, people do want different things, and sometimes maybe those core values are not what they want to do or be part of anymore, right? Can't imagine, but I'm just think you got to think like that, right? Do individuals, your employees and team members, do they follow those core values as well? So one of the things that we do is every time we talk to our folks on a quarterly basis and annual basis, are you part of those core values? We get kudos based on the 5 core values. We have a system that we implemented earlier this year where we get points amongst each other based on core values.
That's great.
I
love that.
And it gets people excited. It's like, account leader, X, Y, and Z. And people are liking that because you're not only being acknowledged because people appreciate being acknowledged, but now you're being acknowledged with points that are tied to a core value. So it's very important, like you said. I appreciate you sharing that.
And it's really important from a business perspective as well, right? I think the thing that can be really tough about values is that often they are viewed as like platitudes. There may be words on the wall, on a plaque that don't really mean something. And if you don't measure them, if you don't really look at how real they are, they can be. They can just kind of be like, oh, well, these are the things we say we do, but nobody really does them. And to your point, similarly, Booz Allen measures them. For all of our leaders, once a year, we're asked, does this person demonstrate the best of Booz Allen, the best of these values? And it makes a difference.
That's perfect. Yeah. And that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that for sure. And we got a few more questions here before we wrap it up. One of them is, what kind of advice do you have for future leaders?
My advice for anyone who wants to lead other people is to cultivate within themselves an affection for those people. When you love the people that you lead, both you and they have the capacity to do greater things than either of you could have ever imagined.
Wow, that's powerful. That word love too, you know what I mean? It's real, right?
It's kind of a funny word in the business environment, right?
You don't hear it much, yeah.
No, you don't, but why? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure why you don't hear it in the business environment. You take a world of people who literally have physical hearts beating within us,
right?
From which the concept of love comes, right? And then you bring them into the place where they spend the majority of their waking hours, and you kind of strip away, no pun intended, the heart of life, which is love.
Right.
So, I don't really think you can do that.
Yeah.
I think even in the workplace, love, not in a romantic sense,
right, of course,
but love between people, human to human, is very natural.
Right.
Is very fitting. And as a leader, you have to love.
Yeah.
You have to have a love. It might just be a care, depending on how you think of that for them. But you're going to have hard times. You're going to have hopefully great times. And I just believe that that's very foundational to doing great things, is having a, however you want to phrase it, deep care for those people.
Yeah. And I think you say we don't know why this love word sometimes is people are not comfortable with, and I think it's because of the vulnerability, and I think it goes back to being kind or being nice, and people see leaders as untouchable, or they're up there and we're down here, that kind of thing, and it's not, right? I mean, the world is changing, right? I think after COVID, we all came out, I feel, into like reset. I feel like even the world got reset. A lot of places were thriving and nature was growing. And I feel like in the last 4 years, this big movement, and including this podcast, right, into sharing kindness and leading with kindness and love. You have to love people. and you have to care about people, right? And you need to make sure that tell people that it's okay. It's okay to do that.
Right. And I want to add to that, I'm not a known leader per se, right? So somebody listening to this could be like, that guy is super soft. What's going on with him? With the love, that deep care for somebody comes this intentionality about calling them up to do their greatest things. So loving someone is not, let me figure out how to make things easy on them.
That's key.
It's not, as I mentioned before, pulling any punches when there's some sort of difficult situation,
right.
Giving them a pass. In fact, it's probably being very intentional and extremely rigorous and stretching people.
Yeah.
So I think I'm hopeful that the people that you talk to on my team would say, Brian cares deeply about me and he expects a lot of me. He expects me to do things that are sometimes beyond what I think I can do.
Yeah. And that's beautiful because you're not only caring, but also pushing. And that goes back to growth, right? You're not only growing as a leader, but you're also helping your team grow and rise together. That's the biggest thing that we can do with our folks. So great advice for future leaders there. So as we're wrapping things up here, bringing it home, one question that I love to ask at the end is, if you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
I love this question. Harriet Tubman, American abolitionist, social activist. She led people with incredibly clear purpose. One might say no greater a purpose than any, right? To save their lives, to rescue them from slavery. She put her life on the line. I can't think of anything that a leader could do that's greater than that. Yeah. If I could be transported in time, I would just sit with her, ideally by a fireplace with a warm drink, coffee in hand, and just listen. Just basking in her stories that embody true leadership.
That's beautiful. I would love to be part of that as well. I mean, leading in the front, right? Leading by example, giving up, risking your life, and you're doing so many things. That is love. That is caring. And that kind of brings it all together, as we've been talking about.
Like you said, modeling. That's how leadership really works. What we say matters, but it really has to be modeled to be real. Absolutely.
Well, this has been great, Brian. I mean, it's been a great conversation. Our audience, I'm sure will get so many nuggets. So it's been very exciting getting to know you even more. I've known you for the last 3 years, but just now it's really we're going deep as it relates to who you are and who we are as individuals, what we really want to make impact this world.
I really appreciate you inviting me here.
Absolutely. So where can our listeners connect with you? If they want to reach out, say hello, and some feedback or something.
Probably the best place is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Very uncommon. I'm really not connected on social media.
Okay.
But I always look forward to hearing from people. So reach out to me there.
Perfect. So look for him in LinkedIn. Well, again, thank you, Brian, for joining us today, and I want to thank our audience again for listening, and we're building our audience, right? With episode 8 right now, and we're building some momentum. So please subscribe, share, and let people know about what we're trying to do here. We're really trying to impact the world through one person at a time, kind leader, right? Building those kind leaders out there.
I love it.
So thanks again, and so everybody be kind, bring value, rise together. Have an amazing day, everybody.